All right, this is the Big Douglas Show. It is another Opposition Wednesday as we get ready to preview the Colts on Sunday. Today, two guests join us, which I'm very excited about. JMV from 1070 The Fan. JMV, how are you?
I'm good. You may be less excited about having me on here in about 10 minutes, so understand that, okay?
Okay, very intrigued about that.
Yes.
And from the Colts, covering the Colts is JJ Stankevitz. JJ, thanks for joining us. It's a tongue twister sometimes to describe the guys that cover the Colts for the Colts. How do you describe to people what it is you do for a living, JJ?
I'm the team writer for Colts.com, and this season I am now the stadium PA announcer at Lucas Oil Stadium for Colts games.
Oh, nice. Let's see. It's too bad it's a slow business news week for the Colts. Nothing going on there. Before we get to the Colts, fellas, I'm curious. It's Halloween next week. What is your go-to candy for Halloween?
If you're going to start with me, it's always anything chocolate and peanut butter. The answer is always chocolate and peanut butter right there. And if it's Reese's, that's fine, but it's always chocolate and peanut butter before anything else.
I'll tell you what mine is not, because I agree with JMV. It is not Almond Joy. I went in hard on how bad Almond Joy is on yesterday's episode of the Official Colts podcast, to the point that Bill Brooks, Ring of Honor wide receiver here at the Indianapolis Colts, JMV, you know, Bill does not get fired up about many things. He got fired up at me because he likes Almond Joy so much. And he's like, you have terrible opinions on candy. So I'm getting yelled at by Bill Brooks, which takes a lot. And it's because Almond Joy is just it's a trash candy. It's not good.
Well, since when do we start living in a world, Big Doug and JJ, when dark chocolate became a go-to? I mean, back in the day, remember you get those bags of Hershey's, and nobody would ever eat the dark chocolate. And now dark chocolate's everywhere.
It's supposed to be good for your heart. Yeah, it's supposed to be good for your heart, you know.
But it tastes like crap, though. That's the problem.
It sure does.
If I'm going to eat chocolate, fellas, it's got to taste good. I don't want to taste crappy chocolate. So
I have never been concerned about my health when eating candies, first of all.
That's a good point. Yeah, right.
Is that, JJ, that's the one that's got
coconut? It's awful.
Yeah, is that awful. A problem? The coconut is awful.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible how bad the coconut is in that candy.
Well, remember Almond, the catchphrase in the commercials, Doug, back in the day, Almond Joy's got nuts, Mounds don't. Remember, so yeah.
Yes, okay.
Marketing genius by them.
Okay, let's get on to a little bit of football. That's what we're here to talk about. It's interesting. Colts, I think last time I looked, are still 3-point favorites in this game. Quarterback change comes. Actually, let's do this. JMV, what do you think the tenor of the fan base was before the season started?
Everybody was excited. Everybody thought that Matt Ryan was going to be the guy that comes in here and is the opposite of Carson Wentz and leads this team to where everybody thought this team should ultimately be, and that is challenging for the top spot in the AFC South, getting a home playoff game, and then maybe marching on and making some noise come the postseason. And clearly, all of that's 3-3-1, however, but all of that has not happened with this now quarterback change going into week number 8, too. But that's exactly what they thought. That was the hope. And really, for the past couple of years, when they have decided to go with the older quarterbacks that have been there and done that, guys, those thoughts have all been prominent with this particular Colts team. But JJ may or may not agree with this, but it kind of seemed like this year there was even more so of that because they felt they finally, veteran quarterback-wise, may have gotten it right. And, you know, obviously making that change, it sure as heck doesn't look that way.
It's Tom Brady's fault.
I would. Well, so this is kind of how I'm looking at this. All right, so Matt Ryan, you know, loses his starting job in week 7 here in Indy. But if you look around the league, the old guard of quarterbacks, it's not just Matt Ryan. Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he's getting killed out there. Tom Brady this year, Tampa has had 43 third and longs this year. Tom Brady has completed 4 of them for first downs. That old guard, that win from the pocket quarterback, for whatever reason this year, has taken a steep decline from where it was last year when Brady and Rodgers were MVP candidates. I mean, Matt Ryan still is throwing for 4,000 yards in Atlanta. And for whatever reason this year, look, Matt Stafford won a Super Bowl last year. Now LA can't get anything going on offense. So for whatever reason, that old guard quarterbacks, and this would probably take a pretty deep dive into it, but that the cliff has been there. And it's not just here in Indy where those teams are struggling. Indy is just the team that moved on from that quarterback right now.
Hey, Big Doug, I want to add to this as well. When JJ talks about the old guard quarterbacks, that's one thing too. And, obviously Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are at the top of the list of guys, especially Allen with the RPOs that he runs. And while he looks great right now, there is such a shelf life, Big Doug, to that. We saw it not in terms of RPO here, but with Andrew Luck here, everybody talked about the extension of the play. His signature was extending the play, and that was great until he got hit so many times extending the play and otherwise that it wasn't cool anymore. And then it became a detriment. At some point, that's going to become a detriment for guys like Josh Allen, and specifically Josh Allen. This is just his moment. That's why it's Buffalo's moment to make something happen with that, because you just cannot in the NFL continue as a quarterback to take those types of hits. And guys, he takes hits late in games when they're up 28 points, still running RPOs in the quarterback keeper. So at some point that clock runs out.
Completely agree. And I mentioned Tom Brady earlier. I really do think the success that they had plugging him in, I kind of thought maybe the Commanders 2 years ago would try with Matt Ryan. Yeah, he ended up staying a year late in Atlanta, but that's kind of been the idea. Ron Rivera said it here a couple times. They were going to build the roster, insert quarterback. It just feels like that's not the way it works now. Good quarterbacks don't hit the market for a reason, which is why most teams are trying to draft them. Let's talk about the new guy. I appreciate the fact let me start here. I was surprised that they had already said that they'd be putting in Ehlinger for the rest of the year. It seemed unnecessary. However, I am excited for them, for you guys, that's the move that they made, because going to Foles gets you nowhere. At least this year, you have enough time to get Ehlinger on tape where defenses can make adjustments. JJ, were you surprised, though, that they came out this early and just said, no, here's the guy for the rest of the time?
Yeah, I think the initial surprise kind of wore off once you started to hear the reasoning behind it. And to me, the reasoning was almost less about how Matt Ryan had played this year and more about what this offense needed at this point in the season, where, Matt Ryan was under a lot of pressure. And at the age of 37, he's not a guy who's going to escape it. That's just not part of his game. For Sam Ehlinger, that is part of his game. You look at, he had a 45-yard touchdown run in the Colts' third preseason game. And I know we're talking about preseason, you're going against backups, whatever. But Tampa ran a five-man pressure with a single high safety over the top, and they ran man underneath. Well, on that play, Ehlinger gets pressured. He escapes the pocket to his right and then rumbles 45 yards for a touchdown. That's not a play that Matt Ryan at this stage in his career is going to make. And when your quarterback is under as much pressure as Matt Ryan has been under, I think you look at it and you say, okay, well, if we get a guy who can at least scramble when he's under pressure, that will aid our offense on a handful of plays per game. Sam Ehlinger still is going to have to win from the pocket. He still is going to have to do some things with his arm, but that ability to win with his legs just a couple times a game. If Sam scrambles 4 times for 37 yards against the Commanders on Sunday, that's probably a pretty good game for him. Just those couple of plays a game where you convert the 3rd and long that would not have been converted previously, those can be a bit of a spark for an offense.
Jim Nagy came out today or yesterday, one of the two, the director of the Senior Bowl, and compared Ehlinger to Jalen Hurts as far as the makeup of a guy and what they look like projecting to the next level, and that both have gotten better since they've become pros. What kind of have you seen from Ehlinger since he's been in town, JMV?
Well, yeah, I haven't seen a lot. JJ's certainly seen more of him in those, I guess, not so common practice situations when he's got an opportunity. I mean, you go back to the preseason, and that's what JJ was talking about as well. Listen, can the guy move around? Yeah, there's no doubt about it. But I've said this, Big Doug, the entire time. This team is only going to be as good as the offensive line, and the offensive line has not been good whatsoever. And I don't care who the quarterback is at this point. I don't, whether it's Matt Ryan or Sam Ehlinger or anybody whoever is back there is going to get hammered, and that's kind of what I expect. But you just got a young and a fresh leg dude that is capable of maybe escaping more, certainly, than a 37-year-old quarterback might. But to me, that's what it comes down to. That group is the group that has to get its act together. That's the group that has to help out the running offense. That's the group that has to help out the quarterback. That's the group that has to protect a little bit more so you can attempt maybe even one pass down the field. It is all on that offensive line. And I'm sorry for what it's getting paid, being the highest paid offensive line in the NFL. It has been awful what they have provided so far. You saw that with Matt Ryan. He was not capable of doing anything with that. And you know what? I'm going to think the same until I see Ehlinger get a little bit more protected, get a little bit more comfortable, because that's what's going to happen on Sunday. They're going to make him defensively incredibly uncomfortable with the way this offensive line has been protecting. That's the biggest problem with this team.
Explain it to me, because I think I know it's been down, but they put a lot of resources, to your point, JMV, into that offensive line. I think people around the league that don't pay attention to the Colts probably think that it's still a premier offensive line. It's really not been that way. Maybe more run blocking.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
Why is that?
You know what? I don't know. I mean, guys that have been extended, have been paid handsomely, haven't performed. I mean, you did go into the season with, left tackle situation with Matthew Pryor that clearly didn't work. And, I don't know how solidified it is with Dennis Kelly right now, but certainly it seems like it has been better with him in the past game, almost 2 games now, than it was prior to. But Matthew Pryor hasn't been the answer there that Chris Ballard had hoped. So you didn't take care of the left tackle. Bernard Ryman's a guy you drafted back in April, and he's not ready for prime time just yet. So you put Pryor at right guard. You've got at right tackle Braden Smith, who hadn't played up to expectations. Ryan Kelly at center hasn't played up to expectations. And you could also probably add in Quentin Nelson the past couple of weeks. There you look at this entire offensive line, the foundational building blocks of this team that are failing miserably compared to how they get paid. And until that gets fixed, until they start playing better, more cohesively, this offense to me has zero chance.
JJ, is the GM, how hot is the seat getting for the GM and the coach there in Indianapolis, do you think?
I mean, I know the most popular guy in town behind the backup quarterback is the next head coach or the next GM. This team's still 3-3-1. I think it's a long way off before we're having those discussions, seriously, at least here on 56th Street. But the one thing I look at with this move is that the Colts, for going on since Andrew Luck retired, it's been this kind of, every year it's been a new veteran quarterback. It's been Phillip Rivers, it's been Carson Wentz, it's been Matt Ryan. Sam Ehlinger gives you the opportunity to find a young quarterback. And you know what? If he doesn't work out, you gave it a shot. You gave it a shot with a young quarterback. Then in 2023, maybe you look at going to get that young quarterback in the draft. But if it works out and Sam Ehlinger takes, some steps forward in his career, and all of a sudden you leave this year, and, so the comparison to Jalen Hurts, you brought that up, that Jim Nagy brought up. Last year at this time, the Eagles looked like a mess. I mean, they were a pass-first offense that didn't have much of an identity. And then right around this time, right around the end of October, Nick Sirianni, the former offensive coordinator here in Indianapolis, he switched it. He switched that offense to a run-first offense. They accentuated what Jalen Hurts did well. Lo and behold, the Eagles make the playoffs. A year later, they are the best team in the NFL at 6-0, or at least in the NFC. So that can happen in a season. This is more of a drastic change in terms of personnel, but it also be a change in terms of scheme, because of what you can get to with Sam. Going back to JMV talking about the RPOs, that's something that you can get into more with Sam Ehlinger. You can get into some of the nakeds and the bootlegs that will help your offensive line a little bit by getting Sam on the move outside the pocket. There are certain things. And then on top of that, I think what we've seen over the last couple of weeks with the Colts is that this offense is geared toward being pretty decent out of the shotgun. That's what we saw. I think the Colts only ran 6 under center snaps and they put up 34 points against the Jaguars in week 6. Last week against Tennessee, I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was predominantly a shotgun offense. That might fit this offensive line better to be a shotgun offense. You kind of figure that part of it out. The run blocking out of the shotgun on run plays has been very good this year. Jonathan Taylor is averaging more yards per carry out of the shotgun than he is under center. So that might be a solution there to just accentuate the skill set of the players you have is get out of the shotgun a little bit more. Let Sam run some of those RPOs and those nakeds and those bootlegs. And maybe that is sort of the spark that this offense needs to then, one more point is JMV mentioned pushing the ball downfield. Maybe that leads to some more of those downfield shots.
Hey, Big Doug, and I will tell you this to play off of what JJ just said. The team, they firmly believe that Sam Ehlinger is a guy that can get the job done. Like a lot of people have called into me, have asked me, is this the Colts punting the season at 3-3-1? And they're not punting the season. They view this as an absolute option that they believe can work. And at the same time, you can see what a dude that certainly has interested everybody in that building all the way up to the owner, Jim Irsay in this case. You can see what this guy has to offer. Now, a part of what you're going to see on Sunday is a new and fresh dude that's just not used to a lot of this. It's going to take a minute. There's no doubt about that. But at 3-3-1, this team is still not punting on the season before Halloween. They do firmly believe that Ehlinger is a guy that can step in and get the job done, even if guys like me are a little skeptical about it because, A, we haven't seen him a great deal, and B, this entire season hasn't really gone the way that anybody, and certainly those overrunning the Colts, thought.
Well, and I appreciate it, quite frankly. And in Washington, a lot of people wish that this organization would have done the same thing. You know, we have a young guy in Sam Howell that they drafted this year. Carson Wentz goes down, and you put in Heineke. And listen, Heineke may be one of the better backups in the league, but I think we firmly know now that he's a backup. I think if he was starting, he would have found his way into a starting lineup sometime in the first 5 years he was in the league. So I think a lot of people here, although, everybody loves Heineke, would have liked to have seen some of Howell. So I appreciate that they went this direction instead of Foles because, I mean, let's face it, you know exactly what you have in Foles already.
Well, and Foles is another guy who he's not going to scramble a whole lot. That's not part of his game.
That's right.
As well.
Let's see. Jonathan Taylor coming back from injury. It feels like if there's a way to get at this defense and this defensive line, it's with the running attack. How healthy is he, do you think now, JJ?
He looked really healthy last week against Tennessee. There was this planned rotation where because JT hadn't practiced in a couple of weeks, he hadn't really got the conditioning up. They planned to rotate him with Nyheim Hines and Deion Jackson at running back last week. So that's why JT only had 10 carries. He still had 17 touches, caught 7 passes out of the backfield. But he ran with some pretty Jonathan Taylor-esque burst in that game against Tennessee, which, even going back, he had I believe it was a toe injury earlier in the season, early in September, before he had the ankle. And I think that was probably the best Jonathan Taylor looked since week 1 against Houston when he went for, I think it was 161 yards. He looked like he was Jonathan Taylor again. So that, and then you combine that with figuring some things out blocking wise in the shotgun run game. That gives me confidence going into this game against Washington that they can continue to figure some things out there and then maybe use play action to attack the Washington DBs who I'm sure have not totally played up to what was maybe expected there this year either.
And, JJ, playing off of what he had to say, too, getting down the field. We talked about that a little bit earlier, and I know Michael Pittman Jr. said in the post-game locker room on Sunday, he would like to see this offense trust the wide receivers, both he and Alec Pierce, and that wide receiving room to go up and make plays and get the ball. And I don't know what you feel about this, JJ. I think the one thing that Ehlinger does, he has improved his arm strength, and he's going to throw it up. And he's going to allow his guys to go up and get it. And that's something that Matt Ryan just simply couldn't do, whether it was a lack of arm strength, time to do it, just he wasn't comfortable in that. Sam Ehlinger is going to be able to do that. And I think we're going to see a lot more throwing it up and those 50-50 ball type of opportunities than we have seen in a while coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, if you have Alec Pierce in fantasy football, it's probably a pretty good week to have Alec Pierce on your team.
Maybe an extremely underrated wide receiver group.
Yeah, I mean, coming into the year, there are all these questions about do the Colts have enough weapons on offense? I think JMV, looking at this season right now, the weapons are not the issue with why the Colts are near the bottom of the NFL in scoring. You're getting good production out of Michael Pittman Jr. Alec Pierce is really coming on. Paris Campbell is having a really nice season, doing some things in the short passing game and the intermediate passing game. We haven't seen him go deep yet. I think that might be coming. And then, Nyheim Hines, Jonathan Taylor, both have had spurts. We know what they can do. Kylan Granson, the tight end out of SMU, looks pretty good. Jelani Woods has made some plays. So the weapons on this offense, you don't have a Jamar Chase here, but the whole of this offense and the weapons that Sam Ehlinger will be throwing to is pretty solid. It's not the problem here.
And I think there were some guys that were frustrated a little bit. Malcolm Pittman Jr. being one, about, hey, trust us a little bit more to help out our quarterback. But I think the problem was that you just couldn't help the quarterback because the offensive line couldn't help the quarterback. The only time we really saw an overly efficient Matt Ryan was in that Jacksonville game where they dramatically changed up. They went to the tempo, they went to the no huddle, and that worked against Jacksonville. But as you saw last week, when they tried to do anything, Mike Vrabel and company, they weren't going to fall for that banana in the tailpipe. Not any of that whatsoever, because that is a strong, tough defense, strong-minded, well-coached. And no matter what personnel you have out there who's injured, whatever, it always seems like that they have an answer for whatever the Colts do. But it'll be interesting in the short week to see offensively what Marcus Brady and Frank Reich add to this and see how much more down the field opportunities that the Colts are going to have, because JJ can attest to this. We've seen little to none this season through the first 7 weeks. That's probably at the top of my list, Big Doug, is interest in watching this game on Sunday.
Well, and stretching the field like that should help the run game out too, where if you can get them to play back a little bit, that can help Jonathan Taylor get a little bit more in terms of the run game.
The interesting thing is how similar the two organizations are at this exact moment when they've kind of switched from these quarterbacks. I mean, Carson Wentz was not moving around, took a lot of sacks for us, made the offensive line look much worse than when Taylor Heineke was in. And again, it's kind of that thing where they're excited that Taylor can use his legs and move around a little bit. And I know Terry McLaurin was excited that Heineke was actually force-feeding him the ball a bit on Sunday, which for whatever reason, Wentz had refused to do. JJ, I'm curious. I think people in Washington were cautiously optimistic when Carson Wentz got here. It really didn't give them the spark they were hoping for. Were you surprised? I mean, Carson Wentz, from outside looking in, the record was fairly good last year up until that last game, I get. Where did you stand on that?
I think I was a little surprised just because last year, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. For all the criticism he got, he did take care of the ball, rather well. But the thing that we saw as the season went on was that opposing defenses just said, all right, we're just going to blitz you. And, you got to figure that out. You got to sort that out. I mean, Carson, I think he was the top 5 most blitzed quarterback in the NFL last year. And that's something that he has struggled with over the course of his career. So if I had to guess, and you go look at the numbers in Washington, he's probably been near the top of the NFL in blitz rate that we've seen. So, that's something where opposing defensive coordinators, they're just going to spam that because they see it. They say, all right, show us you can beat it. I mean, it's like what happened with Lamar Jackson last year. Lamar couldn't beat the blitz, due to the weapons that were around him. And they just said, forget it. We're just going to blitz you over and over and over again. That's what defensive coordinators do in the NFL is they figure out what you are not good at. And then they're going to do that until you show you can beat it. That's what we've seen teams do to this Colts offensive line with some of the stunts in the games and the overload fronts. And it's something that, the Colts have to sort out there and continue to sort out. But that's probably what's also happening with Carson Wentz over there in Washington.
Yeah, what's funny about that, what JJ brings up too with this offensive line, you get stunts and you get twists, and Jacksonville in 2 games really did that. The Colts handled that better with that tempo a couple of weeks ago on that win at home against Jacksonville. But they don't even have to blitz as much. And not only has it been the offensive line, but Jonathan Taylor, when he's been in there, has struggled with blitz pickup as well when they do decide to blitz. So that has been an issue for this offensive line. And I have a theory on this as well. I know that JJ brought up Carson Wentz a year ago. Most blame Carson Wentz for holding the ball too long, trying to make something out of nothing. But I think we can look back on that and start looking at what this offensive line wasn't good at in pass protection and what Phillip Rivers the year prior covered up. He covered that up because it was a snap and the ball was gone right there. And then we all talked about how great the offensive line was. Well, they didn't have to protect like they had to protect for Carson Wentz, and you didn't have to protect like you had to protect or they wanted to protect for Matt Ryan. So I think that's part of the issue. The overrated offensive line and pass protection. Last year we blamed Eric Fisher I think this year they probably love to have a guy like Eric Fisher, at least in the run blocking game, compared to what we've seen so far this season. So I think it's been more about the quarterbacks and what the quarterbacks have done as far as the offensive line being great. I think that's where they have been massively overrated, and that's something that whether it's Chris Strasser or Frank Reich or whomever, they have to figure that out. They have to figure out what they have, because I just don't think, especially in the pass protection game right now, JJ, they really truly know what they have, because this group is so underachieved.
Well, I think that's part of, the quality of an offensive line is often tied to the quarterback, where, is the quarterback getting the ball out on time? Is he getting to his drop at the proper depth and those things? And sometimes one offensive line may not be a good fit for one quarterback, but then all of a sudden you drop another guy in there and it's like, oh, they look pretty good again. That, it's hard to silo those things out sometimes, kind of like you were talking about. So maybe this offensive line, maybe what this offensive line needs is Sam Ehlinger back there. We don't know. Yeah. We haven't seen it, but maybe we'll get to, Sunday evening and, we'll be digesting the game and being like, wow, maybe that's what they needed. You never know with this kind of stuff.
It'll be interesting to see too, because the strength of the Washington defense, of course, is up front. They lead the league in pressures, but also lead the league in limit, and they're last in sending the blitz. They get home mostly with 4-man pressures. Let's switch to defense for a little bit for the Colts. Kwity Paye was the draft pick. DeForest Buckner is there. How does the defensive line look? Because other than those two guys, I checked the depth chart. I'm not real familiar with the other guys on that line.
Get familiar with Grover Stewart, man. This dude had 12 tackles as a defensive tackle as a one technique last week against Tennessee. That was the most tackles a Colts defensive tackle has had since like 1994. Right. This dude is playing at a Pro Bowl level. Get to know his name, because he makes it almost impossible for teams to run the ball with any kind of efficiency against the Colts front. He just blows stuff up in the interior. The linebackers have been playing really well. We'll see if Shaquille Leonard comes back, but even if he doesn't, Zaire Franklin's third in the NFL in tackles. Bobby Okereke's playing really well. EJ Speed's playing really well against the run. This is a Colts front that is very difficult to run the ball on, and that starts with Grover Stewart, a guy who, again, get to know his name out there in the D.C. area.
I've been impressed with DeForest Buckner playing with an injured elbow. The past couple of weeks, he has been absolutely outstanding. I have been incredibly disappointed, Big Doug, with Yannick Ngakoue. I was really excited when they made that deal. I was, because the Colts had not had a consistent edge rushing presence since Robert Mathis. It had been so long, and I thought, this is the guy. He had like 4 other stops, whatever, but he had produced wherever he had been. You reunite him with Gus Bradley. I just thought, boy, this guy's going to have a huge season. I know he was not good against the run, and he's been awful against the run this year, which has made him somewhat rotational out there, but he hasn't been good coming off the edge, hasn't been consistent getting after the passer. That's probably among these defensive players, individually speaking, the biggest disappointment I've seen in this team, because I talked about it all off season. I was as excited about this as anything else, and it's been somewhat of a lead balloon, Doug, so far this year with Ngakoue coming off the edge.
To kind of piggyback off of that, Jan's got 3.5 sacks this year, which puts him on pace to probably get about 8, which is sort of around his career average, which is good. But the Colts defense hasn't played with a lead. I mean, they've barely led at any point in their games. The Jacksonville game, they win that game by 7, but they're down by a point until 23 seconds left in the game. So I think we haven't totally seen the full potential of this front, but collectively, the Colts are 8th in the NFL in sack rate. They're 1 spot behind Washington. So they're getting sacks even when they're not in positions that traditionally you would think, all right, it's 3rd and 7, the opposing team's down by 10 in the second half. They have got to have a 7-step drop, and they've got to pass, and that's where you can really hit home. We haven't seen a whole lot of that. I mean, we've seen a lot of dink and dunk from guys like Ryan Tannehill and Trevor Lawrence. There have been opportunities. I'm not saying there haven't been missed opportunities by this pass rush, but those have been fewer and farther between, just because there haven't been so many opportunities for this pass rush.
Well, and Ngakoue is rotational because he can't play against the run whatsoever. I mean, not and that's been a big issue here. But I will say this about this defense, Big Doug and JJ. They have stepped up big, and I know I'm talking about Russell Wilson here, and he's an absolute mess. but he was still, I think, a viable option going back to that Thursday night game. As we saw, he's not any longer. But against guys that can really move around, that you have to kind of staple down defensively, as they say, keep them in the well. The Colts defensively have done really well against Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson this season. That's probably where I've been most impressed. And you're going back to that Chiefs game, because they did exactly against Mahomes what you have to do blueprint-wise to win a game against Kansas City. I was impressed with that. I was impressed the work they did against the Broncos, but up front with what the third highest paid defensive line I think in the NFL, I was hoping for more. Grover Stewart's been great, but I was hoping for more from guys like Ngakoue that certainly had been there and done that.
I got to claim ignorance here. I'm not sure when Darius Leonard became Shaquille Leonard. Was that this year?
Started training camp. He requested that everyone start calling him by Shaquille, which is what he's always been preferred to be known by. But he went into when he was training for the combine, they essentially brought him in and they're right, Darius Leonard, go over there, and he didn't want to correct anyone. Just say put your head down, get your work done. So he finally put it out there this year. Hey, please call me Shaquille. That's what everyone close to me calls me, and that would be nice if you called me that too.
That defense is a zone primarily, if I'm not mistaken. So they will not be following. It won't be one cornerback's job, let's say, to shut down Terry McLaurin.
Right.
How does that work? And how has Stephon Gilmore been?
Gilly's been great. He has made game-winning plays in 2 of the 3 Colts victories. Broke up a pass late against Kansas City that got picked off. Then he had the interception in the end zone against Denver late in that game that led to the Colts lead going down and tying it, sending it to overtime, where he broke up Russell Wilson's pass on 4th down in the end zone to win the game. He has been outstanding for the Colts. And they're primarily a cover 3 team. That's what Gus Bradley has always been. But they're adding some more wrinkles. The Colts are playing Gus Bradley is playing a higher percentage of quarters, so kind of 2 high safeties, and then the corner is playing zone. He's playing a higher percentage of that than he has in years past, specifically last year with the Raiders. And he's starting to figure out more things with his personnel, what he can and can't do with some of the match coverage principles that they have. This defense is starting to come together, though. I mean, they're not getting turnovers. That's the one thing that this defense is not doing right now, is getting turnovers. But they are really hard to drive the length of the field against, and they don't allow a lot of explosive plays. So those 2 things lend themselves to a game like you see against Tennessee on Sunday, where they don't allow a touchdown. They allow 4 field goals against the best red zone offense in the NFL. It's been pretty solid so far on that side of the ball.
Yeah, Big Doug, I've been impressed with Stephon Gilmore too, because when they went out and brought him in, they had exactly him being a game changer, game clincher, a guy that makes a play to win a game. That's what they had in mind, and he has been that guy. And the thing that is certainly missing is that of Shaquille Leonard and the playmaking ability he had a year ago. Honestly, what he did last year really masked a defense that simply wasn't very good. It made the entirety of the defense look a lot better because he got after the football and he caused so many takeaways. And that has been a major issue with this defense, not only when he's out, but I mean, for that fleeting moment when he was actually in there. You need that. I'd love to see him get back. I've always wanted to see him work with these other guys. And, getting back to the point I was making about what I don't think they're doing up front, I think he's kind of a linchpin to that too. I mean, he's a guy, when he's not out there, you can't lean on him, even though Zaire Franklin's been good, Okereke has been good. You just kind of know that he's lurking in the area, and you're thinking a little bit more about, the possibility of him taking the ball away. And that just hasn't been there this year. And I think that has a drastic effect overall on the entirety of the defense. We just haven't seen, without him out there, I think potentially what this defense can be for the most part.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Just the foundation of this defense is there in terms of what they're able to do, tackling wise, fundamental wise, but the real building of this defense we haven't seen yet because Shaq hasn't been out there.
We wrap all these Wednesday shows like this. JMV, if Ron Rivera called you and said, "Hey, what's the key to getting a win here in Indianapolis?" what would you tell him?
I would probably say you would need to make the Colts offense, you would have to take away explosive plays from this Colts offense. Make Sam Ehlinger drive the length of the field on 10, 12 plays in his first NFL start. That would probably be where I would go is, keep a lid on this offense. Don't allow Jonathan Taylor to get free and don't allow Sam to beat you down the field, whether it's with his arm or with his legs, and see if that's enough. Maybe Sam is capable of leading a 12-play, 75-yard drive where he converts 4 third downs and the Colts get in the end zone. But I would probably say against most rookie quarterbacks or young quarterbacks making a start early in their career, make them beat you with patience. That's probably what I would say.
All right, Big Doug, here's what I would say, because you said it earlier. If Washington's so good as they have been getting home, getting to the quarterback with 4, that's it. That's going to be enough right there. Because if they get home with 4 against Ehlinger in his first start coming up on Sunday, this offense has all sorts of problems because they can't handle, certainly if they can't handle that, they're not going to be able to handle blitzes. And, if you go conventionally and you don't run the stunts and the twists as we've seen against this offensive line, and you can, again, get to that quarterback with 4, that will beat this Colts team on Sunday. The Colts have to be able to do something about that.
JMV, what do you think the score looks like on Sunday?
Oh, somewhere in the neighborhood of 23-20. I may be going a little bit high. Big Doug, I don't know what to expect from Ehlinger. I really don't. I mean, a lot of me thinks that maybe he's going to get one 50-50 in the end zone opportunity that one of these guys might go up and get. But on the other hand, maybe because he doesn't, it's going to turn out to be 3, and they get in the neighborhood of 13 points. But, yeah, until I see a little bit more of Ehlinger, I think that Washington comes in here and wins 23-20.
JJ, what about you?
I think I am more bullish on what the Colts defense can do against Washington. I don't see a ton of paths for Washington. If the Colts can avoid turnovers, that's the big thing. If Washington has to drive the length of the field 10 times, I don't see them scoring more than probably 10 or 13 points in this game. The key then becomes, can you avoid those turnovers on offense that give Washington short fields where Taylor Heineke can go, all right, 3rd and 3 at the 30, I'm going to throw it up to Terry in the end zone, go make a play. By the way, Terry McLaurin, local guy, that's a fun little wrinkle to this game. Went to Cathedral High School here in Indianapolis. But, yeah, I would probably say, I don't know. I'm feeling okay about this. I might say 20-13 Colts, somewhere in that range. Just because, if Sam can take care of the ball, I think there's enough juice on this offense to get the Colts past Washington in terms of Washington not being able to score a whole lot against this defense.
And while, you talk about Ehlinger and staying away from turnovers and such, again, as I've said, I know it sounds like I'm really hard on the offensive line, and certainly I have been. If they can do some things that we haven't seen other than that Jacksonville game, that's going to give them more than a puncher's chance. It's going to give Ehlinger in his first start more than a puncher's chance. But if they revert back to, for the most part, what we have seen, that's problematic. That is problematic for this group and certainly problematic for Sam, who's a first-time starter. I will say this, Doug, I'm excited about seeing him. I am, and I'm rooting for him because he is so easy to root for. He's a good dude. I mean, he has a story, a real-life emotional story that I absolutely love. And honestly, Doug, I'm no cheerleader around here whatsoever. JJ can attest to that. But, man, this fan base needs something. This fan base is excited about seeing some new and freshness here. And the season hasn't gone like it was supposed to so far, just like last year didn't end up like it was supposed to. And I think this fan base needs a shot at energy, and I'd love to see Ehlinger provide that Sunday.
Yeah, again, like I said earlier, it's just amazing how similar the 2 number 4s that will play quarterback on Sunday really are and kind of what they mean to the fan base right now. JJ, I know you had the pod drop yesterday. What do you got coming up for the rest of the week?
So I just wrote a story on Colts.com. I talked to some guys you've probably heard of, Jeff Saturday, Dwight Freeney, and Reggie Wayne, about their memories of playing with Tart Glenn, who's going into the Colts Ring of Honor on Sunday. And then it's all Ehlinger all the time this week, baby, on Colts.com. So check it out for all the updates from here.
I want to know if JJ ended up asking Tariq Glenn if he could still get out there and play a little bit of left tackle. Because that has been necessary.
He looks like he could, right?
Yeah. He's legitimately one of the nicest dudes you will ever meet in your life right there. You can understand why he was so good and fit in so well with an elite level championship team like that.
And JMV, you're on 1070, the fan, every day, Monday through Friday?
Yeah. I've got I'm cooking biscuits in the kitchen too. Have you seen me going back and forth? So I got biscuits in there, and I got a wild cat that's running around trying to bug me right now. My kid's cat, but yeah, 3 until 6 every afternoon, Monday through Friday. I do an all music show coming up on Saturday nights on B105.7, an all request show, and then with me and JJ and others, Colts pregame huddle coming at you on Sunday afternoon leading up. We'll be live down at the stadium, touchdown town. JJ's in the stadium because he's the station voice, right? Man, he's got to get in there and get that stuff going. But we'll be north of the stadium, getting everybody ready on the Colts pregame huddle on Sunday. So it is a busy week every week during the football season, and JJ and I would have it no other way.
Hey, don't forget it's a 4:25 kickoff.
That's right.
We almost had our colleague Jeffrey Gorman show up for a 1 p.m. kickoff until we corrected him, which would have been funny. We'd just be like, hey, yeah, you get to the stadium 3 hours early.
Big Doug, this is a challenge for me because normally I'm drunk by that time too. So I'm going to have to wait.
I'm totally with you on that one, JMV. Totally with you on that one. Fellas, we try to learn something new on Wednesdays. I think we did that today. I really appreciate the time today. Had a blast.
Doug, call anytime. Thank you. JJ,
Absolutely.
great to see you, brother. Talk to you Sunday.
Yep.
Thanks,
See you guys.